Coming up on Bridge City News, police confirmed that the body of a man found in BC was in fact a 33-year-old Lethbridge man. The province announces close to $2 million to help support programs in the battle against hepatitis C. And a BCN exclusive with MP Derek Sloan, who tells us why he believes he's the best candidate to replace outgoing Conservative leader Andrew Scheer.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Roberts.
Thanks so much for joining us. The Lethbridge Fire Department Water Rescue Team has recovered the body of a 20-year-old man who went missing and presumed drowned in Stafford Lake. As BCN's Jeanette Roche explains, with the help of a drone, divers were able to locate the body of the man and bring him to shore late last night.
During this heat wave, there's no place most people would rather be than out on the water. Today, beachgoers crowd Stafford Lake, many oblivious to the fact that a young man drowned here last night.
It was a call of a missing person, presumed drowned. The investigation revealed a 20-year-old man from the Barnwell area had not been seen and was last seen underwater.
According to RCMP, the victim was with another young man, and the pair were out floating on inner tubes that were tied together when he went under.
The location of the person was a little bit difficult to pinpoint where he was last seen in the water. Through assistance from the residents out here, location, a basic area was identified through the use of a drone and through other equipment. The Lethbridge Water Rescue members were able to locate a deceased person in the water.
Police say the victim wasn't wearing a life jacket and they were floating in an area that was away from high traffic where beachgoers couldn't see them.
Don't go too far because obviously there is a beach area.
Bianca Ringelberg and her friends aren't strangers to floating Stafford Lake, but say they don't usually use life vests.
I think for like floating and stuff, it's not the biggest deal, but I guess it would be a safety. Make sure you're with friends and all that. Make sure you have people that know where you are.
This beach is nice because it's nice and open, so you have like a really good range of sight for the kids.
But I know it can happen to anyone. That's devastating, and my heart goes out to the family and stuff.
Yeah.
That's really sad.
For Bridge City News, I'm Jeanette Roche.
Lethbridge police confirmed that a man who went missing last week was found dead in Creston, British Columbia. 33-year-old Lewis White of Lethbridge was last seen last Thursday, and attempts to locate him were unsuccessful. Police posted a picture of White in his Jeep that he may have been driving. His vehicle was discovered near Yak, BC, prompting Creston RCMP and local search and rescue to launch a search for him on Sunday. His body was discovered yesterday, and the matter does not appear to be criminal in nature. The search and recovery for a man who fell into the North Saskatchewan River in Banff National Park continues. Lake Louise RCMP say the incident occurred around 7 p.m. Saturday night when the male, along with two others, stopped to take photos beside the river while hiking along the Glacier Lake Trail. The province announced that there were 80 new cases of COVID-19 today. There are currently 1,397 active cases, with 8,886 people recovering from the virus. Now, here in the South Zone, which includes Lethbridge and Medicine Hat, there are 140 cases. 15 people are in hospital, and there have been 16 deaths in our region related to the virus. Provincially, 187 Albertans have now died from the novel coronavirus. The novel coronavirus has caused another business to temporarily close in southern Alberta. The 7-Eleven on 50th Avenue in Taber had to shut its doors after one of its employees tested positive for COVID-19. Management posted the sign that they were closing and asked staff to self-isolate for 14 days as per provincial guidelines. The note also asked any customers who visited the store between July 13th and 25th to be tested for the virus. Lethbridge City Council recently voted to make wearing masks mandatory on public transit effective August the 4th. Council also asked our city manager to look into the feasibility of making wearing masks mandatory indoors at all City of Lethbridge facilities no later than August 10th. BCN's Ainsley O'Reilly took to the street and asked people in Lethbridge what they thought of the idea.
It's an issue that's been debated over social media among residents all week. Should wearing a mask in a public space be mandatory? Many Canadian municipalities say yes. But what do people in Lethbridge think? On Tuesday, I had the opportunity to ask around, and the overwhelming majority of people who I talked to say that wearing a mask should be mandatory.
It's not just, this is not personal, it's for everybody. We're all in this together. it's not just one nationality that's passing it around, it's everybody's safety.
Oh, for sure I would. You know, I think there's probably some reasonable value in that for the safety's sake. I know I don't have one on because I hate the things, but you know, if the city said, or the province said you have to have it on, you have to have it on. Maybe we could save a few lives, right?
I don't think I'd want to do it unless I had to do it. Like if I was forced, I think it's not my favorite thing to do. But like I said, I would do it if I had to. Go to a grocery store, like you're closer to people, and I think it's just more better for protection wise if you wore it in a grocery store rather than outside where you can keep more distance from people.
A new bylaw has passed in Banff requiring people to wear masks in all indoor public spaces on public transit and outdoors along a 2-block stretch on Main Street. The bylaw, which comes into effect at noon on Friday, does not apply to schools, daycares, hospitals, or school buses. Calgary and Edmonton have brought in similar rules to try and slow the spread of the coronavirus. Cases of COVID-19 have been increasing in Alberta for almost 2 weeks now. The Alberta government announced that it will be giving municipalities $1.1 billion to build shovel-ready infrastructure projects. The province says this funding initiative should create thousands of new jobs.
The $1.1 billion includes $500 million that Alberta's government has already committed in our recovery plan to get hundreds of shovel-ready infrastructure projects underway and thousands of Albertans working on them starting right now under the recovery plan. The other $600 million comes from our new partnership with the national government under the Safe Restart Agreement, which will help municipalities maintain public services as they work through the pandemic. The Safe Restart Agreement will see the province match $233 million in federal funding to support municipal operating costs and $70 million that we will match to support public transit operating during this crisis as those revenues have collapsed.
Kenney says the province's $500 million stimulus program, which boosts municipal infrastructure spending by 30%, will create 2,500 more jobs this year and next. The province also announced a $1.8 million grant today to ensure the continued operation of a Hepatitis C Support program. The campaign, which began in 2005, has supported more than 1,700 Albertans. It provides faster access to services and improved care to help Albertans achieve a full recovery. Government officials say around 7 out of 1,000 Canadians have hepatitis C, and many do not know they have it. The virus infects the liver and, if left untreated, can cause liver cancer or even liver failure. A committee advising the province says wild camping is destroying a large section of Alberta backcountry once considered for a park. The Bighorn area takes in thousands of square kilometers along the foothills and the Rockies. The committee says thousands of random campers are cutting trees, strewing garbage, and trespassing on First Nations land. The previous NDP government planned to turn Bighorn into a provincial park, but the UCP nixed the idea when they won last year's election. Now, when you think of sprint cars, your mind might conjure up fast cars and long oval racetracks with cheering crowds. As Micah Quinn explains now, for one local sprint car driver, he's made a career off of doing that, but it's a career which has been more challenged since the COVID-19 pandemic.
Going speeds of up to 160 kilometers an hour and faster comes easily enough to Kelly Miller. He's been racing sprint cars for the past 13 years, and this is his baby.
This is a ASCS 360 sprint car. It's roughly 700 horsepower, it weighs 1475 with me in it, and yeah, depending on the track size, it can get going anywhere from 100 miles an hour to 120 miles an hour.
Miller races in Alberta and in some of the Midwest states, but he hasn't been able to this year because of the United States border closure due to COVID-19.
We do like to travel. That's the way we get to expand and grow, and I'd say, you know, this year, given the fact of COVID-19 has really put a hardship on us on our traveling. We have gotten to race up in Edmonton once already, and we hope to get out a couple more times. But yeah, hopefully 2021 we'll be able to hit a lot of the Midwest states.
Over the past few years, Miller has won his fair share of trophies.
I believe last year we did win the NSA Points Championship, which kind of ventures into Montana and Alberta. So that was a pretty decent sized trophy, I guess you could say, right? A little bit of an accomplishment. And honestly, over the last 3 years, we've been very competitive across, the Midwest and in Alberta, our trophy cabinet and garage is very full. So I'm very, very, very lucky.
Miller says he's thankful for the constant support he's gotten over the years, from family and locally as well, to ensure he can continue to do what he loves. For Bridge City News, I'm Micah Quinn.
By the end of August, we will know who the new leader of the Conservative Party of Canada will be. The front-runners so far are Peter MacKay and Aaron O'Toole. Leslyn Lewis is also in the running. Derek Sloan is too running to replace current leader Andrew Scheer. Sloan told BCN in an exclusive interview that he has a plan to fix our country's finances. A recent report revealed that the Canadian deficit is $343 billion and our debt is now over $1 trillion.
The answer is the same as it's always been. It means cutting government waste, and I've highlighted a bunch of things that I would cut. We fund the World Health Organization almost $1 billion. We fund foreign abortions, again, almost $1 billion. We have a media bailout for the mainstream media. All of these things and more need to be cut. We need to get our energy sector back on track. That means getting out of Paris Agreement, scrapping Bill C-69, C-48, and then we have to cut regulations and cut taxes for small business and entrepreneurs.
CPC candidate Derek Sloan will also talk about how his faith plays a role as a politician. That's coming up in the second half of our show. Efforts to remove a statue of Canada's first Prime Minister from a Regina park continue. Demonstrators recently tied ropes around the neck of Sir John A. Macdonald Monument at Victoria Park as a call to the city to take it down. It was under Macdonald's watch that residential schools were created and Métis leader Louis Riel was hanged. Activists met with the mayor earlier this month about taking the statue down, and the city is reviewing it. A survey by Angus Reid says many Canadians believe the country spends too much time apologizing for residential schools, and statues like Macdonald should in fact remain standing. We have an update now on the We Charities Scandal. We Charities executive director told the board that we, day speakers, were not paid. Now that's what former board chair Michelle Douglas told the Commons Finance Committee, which is investigating allegations of conflict of interest involving both Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and Finance Minister Bill Morneau. We has already confirmed that it paid hundreds of thousands of dollars in speaking fees to members of the Trudeau family for speaking appearances at We-related events. Douglas says she resigned because the board was kept in the dark about the charity's finances. More than 3 months after a two-day rampage left 22 people dead in Nova Scotia, both the federal and provincial governments have agreed to hold a full public inquiry into the tragedy. Ottawa says it needs to work with all of those affected to get critical answers to ensure it never happens again. There have been multiple calls for an inquiry into the mass shooting, with a number of Liberal MPs today challenging last week's decision by their own government to participate in a less rigorous joint review with Nova Scotia. Our country's chief public health officer is discussing the concept of CFL teams entering a bubble similar to what the NHL is doing in Edmonton and Toronto. Dr. Teresa Tam says she does not have an update yet on how far talks have progressed with the league. The CFL employs many American players who would need to cross the border. Under a quarantine plan, players would have to isolate at home for 14 days prior to departing for the hub city of Winnipeg, be tested for the virus on arrival, then go into quarantine again for another week. Gas filled the air and loud explosions could be heard as demonstrators in Portland, Oregon were dispersed once again today. Close to 1,000 demonstrators returned to the downtown streets for the 61st consecutive day. The crowds have rallied against police brutality and anti-black racism. Protests are continuing in the city of Portland, Oregon on a nightly basis. Now, many are protesting on behalf of racial equality. Amid the protests have been many riots with tear gas being launched at the protesters. 19-year-old Wolfgang Taylor has been attending the protests each and every night. He explains how protesters can protect themselves with gas masks and other equipment.
I've been out here so much that the mask I've worn for one night is so saturated with tear gas that if I exhale hard enough, you can see like a cloud of smoke come out of it. That's pepper and tear gas saturated through my mask. That's why if I can't get a respirator or a gas mask, I wear 3 of these plus respirator filters. Why I'm on the front line? To help protect the people behind me. Because every shot that they waste on me and my shield is a shot that they don't get to use on someone else who is ill-equipped compared to me. The hotheads who go out there with absolutely nothing, who think that they're invincible, who oftentimes they're on the ground within 10 to 15 seconds screaming medic.
Now, some people feel the protests against police brutality and systemic racism in many parts of the world embody familiar elements of traditional faith. Analysts say through the protests, many young people are finding a sense of purpose, ritual, and community on the street.
This is liturgy in the street. This is church in the street. It is song in the street. It is lament in the street. The tears are in the street. It is an altar call in the street. When the kids say, you know, Black Lives Matter, like that's a prayer. It's a demand and a prayer and an altar call that we will make a world in which Black Lives Matter. And that's so exciting to me, that the church is coming outside of the walls, that the outside is coming inside the church.
It was on this day that we saw the outbreak of World War I. A U.S. Army bomber crashes into the Empire State Building, and the author of the book, Tale of Peter Rabbit, Beatrix Potter, is born. This is Today in History for July 28th.
July 28th, 1914. Start of World War I, as Austria-Hungary declares war on Serbia, and the rest of Europe's major powers soon join the fighting. War breaks out a month after a Serb nationalist assassinates Austrian Archduke Franz Ferdinand and his wife in Sarajevo, in what's now Bosnia-Herzegovina. 1932. In Washington, U.S. troops forcibly dispersed the so-called bonus army of World War I veterans during the Great Depression. The veterans had gathered to demand the immediate payment of money for their military service that they were scheduled to receive in a dozen years' time. 1945. In New York City, an accident at what's then the tallest structure in the world. A U.S. Army bomber crashes into the 79th floor of the Empire State Building, killing 14 people. 1929. Former First Lady Jacqueline Bouvier Kennedy Onassis is born in Southampton, New York. Her years in the White House, which she later dubbed Camelot, ended in tragedy when her husband, President John F. Kennedy, was assassinated in Dallas.
The knowledge of the affection in which my husband was held by all of you has sustained me, and the warmth of these tributes is something I shall never forget.
And 1866. Beatrix Potter, the writer and illustrator, whose children's books include The Tale of Peter Rabbit, is born in London. Today in History, July 28th. Camille Bohannon, The Associated Press.
Environment Canada issued a heat warning for our region again today. How long will the hot temperatures last? Full weather details are on deck. We had a heat warning from Environment Canada today. Jeanette Rocher is here now with a complete look at the weather forecast. Jeanette, are we looking at 30 degrees plus for most of the week?
Yeah, that's right. And I was out there this afternoon in the sun, and oh, what a scorcher it is today. We got up to 34 degrees. It felt warmer with the humidex. Overnight low tonight, 15 degrees. We're going to be seeing a westerly wind gusting to 40 kilometers per hour at times into tomorrow. More of the same that we had today. Sunshine, 33 degrees is the high tomorrow. We have been under a heat warning that is going to continue for much of southern and central Alberta. Tomorrow night's low, 14 degrees. And then as we look into the 5-day forecast, much the same as you were saying, how 32 degrees is expected for Thursday. Sunshine, sunny skies lasting right through Friday, Saturday. 30 degrees expected for Friday, 31 for Saturday, and then all the way up to 33 on Sunday with a mix of sun and cloud and partly cloudy skies as well for next Monday with 32 degrees. So as we're looking at those temperatures, just remember to keep cool, drink plenty of water, stay in the air conditioning. We are under that heat warning. 26 is the average high for this time of year. We're certainly higher than that. 11 the average low. 39 degrees was our high temperature. That was back in 1939, and 1995 was our coolest. It was 5 degrees. The sun rose this morning at 5:57 a.m. and our evening sunset tonight, 9:19 p.m. As you can see, those times are getting a little bit shorter now. So days getting teeny tiny bit shorter as we take a look to what's happening tomorrow on the West Coast. Beautiful days in Victoria and Vancouver, 26 and 25 degrees under sunshine. Edmonton and Calgary Calgary, as I was saying, much of Alberta under a heat warning. 29 degrees expected tomorrow in Edmonton and 28 for Calgary. Going to feel much hotter, though, with that humidex. Saskatoon, 32 degrees is the high. They are expecting a chance of thunderstorms tomorrow. Mix of sun and cloud expected tomorrow in Regina with 31 degrees as the high. 28, a lovely day in Winnipeg expected tomorrow with sunshine. Now, Toronto's high, 26 degrees. They could be seeing some increasing clouds there. Storms expected as well. They could see a risk of a thunderstorm. Same thing for Ottawa with a high of 28. Montreal's high 27 with a chance of thunderstorms there as well. Now this whole area in the Atlantic also under a heat warning. Fredericton's high 30. 30 also expected in Charlottetown. They could see some showers tomorrow. Possibility of some thunderstorms tomorrow in Halifax with a high of 30. That's going to feel hotter though with that humidex. And 17 degrees expected in St. John's with a mix of sun and cloud. There you go. That is your forecast. Stay cool, everyone.
The Royal Bank is ending its partnership with We Charity amid the ongoing controversy over its now cancelled $912 million student volunteer contract. The bank says the decision was mutual and it will no longer sponsor or donate to the organization. Virgin Atlantic Airways suspended its sponsorship of the embattled organization last week. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and Finance Minister Bill Morneau face ethics probes after failing to recuse themselves from discussions about the contract despite family ties to the charity. George Weston says it suffered a second quarter loss of around $312 million in COVID-19 related costs, mainly at Loblaw companies. The retail, bakery, and real estate business says it lost $255 million compared to a $184 million profit in the same quarter of last year. Revenue increased by 6.5% to around $12 billion. Adjusted net profit dropped 46% to $142 million, or 93 cents per share. Drug maker Pfizer is reporting a 32% plunge in second quarter profit as the global coronavirus pandemic limited marketing of its new prescriptions for its medicines. Still, the biggest U.S. drug maker posted a profit and nudged up parts of its 2020 financial forecast. Pfizer earned $3.43 billion, even though revenue fell 11% to $11.8 billion. It is among the drug makers leading the race to develop a COVID-19 vaccine. Garmin has acknowledged being victimized by a cyber attack that encrypted some of its systems, knocking its fitness tracking and pilot navigation services offline last week. It says systems should be restored within the next few days. The company did not specify that ransomware was to blame. Garmin had no comment on ransom the company may have paid. Now, here's a look at today's markets. The TSX was down 40 points on the day to finish at 16,121. The Dow was down 205 points to 26,379. The S&P 500 was down 20 points to 3218, and the Nasdaq was down 134 points to 10,402. Oil was down 56 cents to $41.04 per barrel. Natural gas was up 7 cents to $1.80. Gold was up a cent to $19.58.44 an ounce, and silver was unchanged at $24.40 an ounce. Wheat is at $230 per metric ton, barley's at $239, canola's at $4.88, and corn is at $228 per metric ton. Live cattle were up 48 cents to $100.90. Feeder cattle were up $1.35 to $140.70, and lean hogs were down 35 cents of the day to finish at $54.20. The Canadian dollar was up slightly on the day at 74.76 US. Recapping one of our top stories this hour, the Lethbridge Fire Water Rescue Team pulled the body of a 20-year-old man from Stafford Lake located east of Coaldale around 9 o'clock last night. The man was reported missing on Monday afternoon and presumed drowned. Now, with the help of a drone, divers were able to locate the body of the man and bring him to shore. The body has been sent to the medical examiner's office in Calgary. The name of the man is not being released. Self-isolation during a pandemic could really take its toll on our lives. Up next, BCN's Jeanette Rocher chats with Dr. David Curry, president of the group Doing Family Right, about how you can be the best in your best during the darker times in life. That interview is coming up shortly.
Well, the COVID-19 pandemic has drastically changed how our day-to-day lives are lived out, and it's been a frustrating experience for most of us. This change has also put more stress on our family relationships. We want to get some advice from today's guest, Dr. David Curry, president of Doing Family Right, and he is based in Abbotsford, British Columbia. Welcome to Bridge City News, Dr. Curry. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, it's great to be back on the program. Always honored to just help out where I can.
That's great. Okay, so the coronavirus has changed the way we live our lives. Being stuck at home can take its toll on relationships, even good relationships. So we all need our space, obviously. So what kinds of marital upsets are you hearing about as a result of being isolated together?
Well, obviously, we do need a measure of alone time because otherwise there's no mystery in our lives. And now with the COVID crisis, we're working at home or maybe lost our job. And so there's all kinds of pressures financially. There's pressures to just worry about the pandemic, and even contracting the disease. And is it going to affect me? There's worry about long-term factors. And there's stresses on even the educational side because now I'm super teacher and all that super, if you're not used to homeschooling, which most aren't, there's a lot of pressures on the home and the family at this time.
Yeah, no kidding. What advice do you have for couples to avoid these kinds of clashes, kind of about like money and spending too much time together, instead to actually use this time to improve their relationships?
Yeah. You asked the question, Jeanette, because I recently wrote an article exactly on this and the difference between social distancing, which we need to do, and social exclusiveness, which I am actually able to be with my spouse and family at this time where I'm, as it were, quarantined. And so it's how you look at it. It can be a great enriching time. It also can reveal a lot of fractures in the relationship that are already there because the extra stress is going to do that. So just operating with a greater level of patience, recognize that extra stress is there for all of us. And so, a little more grace, a little more patience. Sometimes we have to do timeouts, maybe chill, do our version of workout stresses and things. But there's just some realizations that things are different, and we have to think a longer perspective. It's not just hang in there for another 2 or 3 weeks and we should be good. This could be another few months or longer, and so we got to start getting into some routines that are going to be functional.
Yeah, exactly. Now, of course, the kids aren't able to attend school, so mom and dad are stuck doing some kind of home education. Any tips on how to do this successfully?
Most of us have a measure of tolerance for our kids, but are quite happy that they head off to school around 8:30 and come home around 3. Give us time to do our thing, their learning and those kind of things. But now to take on this whole dimension of teacher, educator, basically preoccupier of 5 extra hours of their day, that's a whole new thing. And most of us maybe don't have an educational background of how to do this right. We likely have the capacity to understand and teach them what most of them need to know, but haven't thought the routines through, haven't thought through how to do this. And of course, a lot of the teaching is online, so they have to connect with teachers and peers, and then they have assignments, and we got to supervise them more and be more present. It's very complicated, and what I would suggest for parents on this one is just embrace this new role early as you can and get past this is frustrating because this could be for a while. And so whether you're going to, pitch hit for each other, husband one day, wife another day, whether it's, because sometimes working at home, the husband might be home working too. She may be off work. Who knows? They might have both lost job and are frustrated with that too. But there needs to be a commitment to helping the kids because it's new to them too, right? I mean, I was talking to my grandkids, and they were talking about how they don't like it as much because they don't get to see their friends. Because, so much of mom and dad is not even their favorite thing either because their friends are fun and they get recess and all these things. And so, it's a change for the kids. So we're going to have to all kind of fall forward together.
Yeah, exactly. It's interesting you kind of mentioned sticking in a routine. Is it important to have the routine, like maybe this is school time, this is chore time, time for physical activity, anything like that? Would you suggest anything like that?
Yeah, 100%. Matter of fact, not even with the COVID-19 pandemic on us, it's wiser for any family to establish a routine so that the expectations don't have to be recommunicated every day. Because if you don't have a routine, it's kind of like, well, what's next? Well, I want to go play video games. I want to go play video games, right? And it just keeps coming back. Or I'm hungry. Well, we're going to have breakfast first. Then we're going to do some schoolwork. Then we're going to have a break, kind of like recess. Then we're going to have a snack. And then, to plan out the day and to have that consistent so that every day you don't have to kind of readjust the schedule. Here's the expectations, and you're not fighting so much because they get in their head, here's what the routine is, and this is how we're going to do it. Now, as they get older, you can flex the routine a little more as they get into their teens and beyond. They have a little more independence, but especially when they're young, the routine is the way to go.
Yeah. Now, you'd mentioned fighting. So with families having to stay at home in close quarters, siblings obviously start to get on each other's nerves, right? So once a fight happens, are there do's and don'ts as to how a parent should respond to an argument?
Well, no different than the fights that happened every day before the pandemic happened. They've always been there. And, strong-willed kids, different personalities, these are all in play. And what happens is through a crisis period, through an extra stress period, the rate of the fights could increase, the intensity of the fights could increase, and even the parents' resiliency to handle the fights could be less. And so, there needs to be a game plan there. One of the things that I like doing is if you've given them some time to work on things, you come back and they're fighting, and you didn't know really who caused what and what happened, the best thing to do is say, okay, listen, you got 2 minutes to go in that room and come out of there having solved this, or else you're both going to have a 10-minute timeout. Yeah, but I didn't do it. He did. Okay, I don't care. I wasn't here. So so you actually put them in a room for 2 to 3 minutes. You try to solve it, talk it out, because if you don't, you're both going to get fun. Well, that's not fair. I said, okay, well, I wasn't here. You go talk it out. So you hear them behind the closed doors going, well, you shouldn't have said that. Well, you're stupid. Well, yeah, but I don't wait 10 minutes. And you hear them talking behind the door, and they come out and we're okay now. Well, because you're gonna unilaterally just punish everybody, and of course that's not fair if you know that one's always picking on another one. But you got to find creative ways to push beyond, and obviously find their currency. What is the thing that really motivates them? If the currency is a snack still, if the currency is a playtime with a certain toy, if it's social media, if it's some kind of electronic game, find out what their currency is, and that's the one that you use to control their behavior.
Wow. Yeah. It sounds like almost forcing them into conflict resolution and communication. So those are good life skills, actually. And this, of course, is a hard one, but what steps can parents take to prevent the kids from starting fights?
Well, I mean, if you got your game plan together and know where we're going, and you can kind of anticipate the trouble spots. When I drive from here to my office, from my home office to my work office, I know the potholes in the road. I know I got to steer a little bit right here, a little bit left there. And parents are wise enough to know the potholes, where the tensions are going to be. This one's going to fight over food. They didn't get enough, so be careful on that one there. This one isn't good at being alone, so you got to supervise them a little more. So the wiser the parent, the more they know the trouble points, where the potholes in the road in the family, to kind of steer them away. And you can start to realize, okay, this was too long of this. We got to stop and come back to this, or we need some activity time to get some of the energy out. You got to just read the situation and react accordingly as a parent.
Yeah, well, you hit the nail on the head right there. How important is it for the kids to get some physical activity during this time?
Well, if you raise kids, and we had 4 and now 13 grandkids, you got to understand that they go stir crazy. They got all this energy inside, and having them kind of really get a little bit tired, a little bit exercise out and all that allows them to settle down for a period. They're not as antsy. They can settle in on a task. And so it's really important to vary the educational time with, I know you can only play in your backyard or in the park near whatever with your kids, but, some kind of tag, or, we got croquet in the backyard, or other different games where they can play, or we go for a family walk or a hike or whatever, just to let that energy be spent. And because most kids like recess at school, they're going to like those breaks as well. And so, but the activity, some kind of physical exertion is a good thing.
Yeah, that's great, especially now that the weather is getting nicer. And then, of course, kids, they love to spend hours on the screen. So what's your advice on how to set proper boundaries around this?
Yeah, well, of course, that's a complicated one before the virus, right? Because, kids are becoming really screen dominant. If I use the word FaceTime, meaning you and me seeing face to face, not like on a screen, though Apple has used that. I like to have kids balance FaceTime, real face to face time, with screen time. to just say, look, if you've had, 2 hours of playing with real people, you can have some time now with screen time, right? And try to find a balance between FaceTime, real people time, and screen time. And then also, keep an idea that the screen time is part of the reward system. For most of them, that's the gratitude. They want to do that. And so that's part of the currency. So really important to keep in mind that I can use that as collateral in my corner to get the behavior that I want. So healthy boundaries, depending on the age of the kid, and be careful when they're really young. They do it too much, the addictive behavior kicks in, and then it more becomes an impulse control problem, and that's hard to correct later. So be careful.
Yeah, and this isolation time, it also gives us an opportunity to spend more quality time together as a family, which is a good thing. So and that could include, regular time reading scripture together or praying together or even discussing some of the many questions that kids might have about life. So what's your advice for parents who are afraid to maybe tackle those big issues in the spiritual family times together?
You're so right, Jeanette, when we're talking about there's more opportunity for family time. I call it social exclusiveness, that we are forced now to be our little unit, our family. And of course, right down to individually, I have no excuse now, well, I don't have time to read my Bible. You have a little more time to read your Bible now. Okay, so you shouldn't be able to use that as an excuse. Also, to carve out time for a couple, especially if your kids are older and they can watch themselves, for couples to go on a walk or just to go pick up with their favorite drink and just chat in the park, husband and wife together. A little more couple time would be really wise. And then even as a family, to do things together as a family. More families are doing more games and puzzles and watching things together than they ever have before. So that's all good. Spiritually is an interesting thing. Rather than, my opinion, would be rather than trying to carve out more God time, interact about spiritual things as part of life. Rather than, we're going to have family devotions now. Well, okay, you can have some devoted time to share something and to pray together. That's good. We pray together every night with our kids. And even on the weekend, we had some grandkids over. We prayed with them every evening. But spiritually, it's really important to live your faith, first of all. Your kids are going to get it from you because they have been watching it. But then secondly, talk about the Lord and the difference Christ makes, even how it relates to the crisis. Talk about that as everyday life conversation, not just in this set time. Have the set times, but be bigger than that. Is that fair?
Absolutely. Of course, this whole situation is having an impact also on divorced parents who are sharing custody of kids. So what we're hearing is that in some cases, one parent maybe believes that the other isn't following proper health precautions, so they feel justified in not allowing visitation or not sharing custody as required by the courts. So what's the proper way to maybe handle a situation like that?
Well, that's a good question. It's a fair question. But for those in that situation, obviously the greater amicability between a divorced, partners, the better it's going to be for the kids. So before COVID came along, there has to be a willingness to work together, that custody is shared and we respect one another. And so the greater there is that flow happening, the more likely during this time we'll be able to get through these things. I did have a couple just last week where there was a stress over this very thing. And it had to do with, the husband wasn't limiting his sphere of connections as much as the wife thought she needed, or she wanted in the family, and so she and he were at odds about, I'm okay with this, no, that's not good, because they have a child with surgery pending, and she didn't want that person, the child, to be sick before the surgery, and so rather than commanding and putting rules down in this situation, no, they weren't divorced, but it was stress over the very same COVID stuff. I just said, look, just appeal on their desire for what's best for the kid, and trust them to make a wise decision, because the kid needs both parents. I mean, no matter, unless it's really abusive or toxic, but the kid needs both parents. And so we need to do our best to be amicable in these situations.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a lot of really, really good advice, especially for this very stressful situation that we're all kind of dealing with right now. Any final thoughts on how to keep our homes a peaceful, safe place during this pandemic?
You got to take responsibility for you. You have to say, okay, I need to be my best me at this time. I need to put a game face on. When I say game face, I don't mean harsh. I mean, it could be pleasant. It could be positive. It could be encouraging. It could be Christ-centered. But you need to be your best you. So whatever it takes to keep you healthy so you can be the best husband, the best wife, the best parent, the best friend, that's what's important. It starts with you and you taking responsibility before the Lord for how you interact with your spouse and your kids. That changes everything if you take responsibility for you. And don't blame others for your issues. Deal with it, be the best you, and trust God to work in your life so that your family can be as positive as can be during this challenging time.
All right. Thank you so much for being with us today, Dr. Curry.
Awesome. Awesome to be there anytime.
The Conservative Party of Canada will be choosing its new leader this fall at the end of August. The 4 candidates running to replace Andrew Scheer are Peter MacKay, Erin O'Toole, Leslyn Lewis, and our next guest, Derek Sloan. Derek is a current Conservative MP who was elected to represent the ridings of Hastings, Lennox, and Addington in Ontario in the 2019 federal election. Derek, welcome to Bridge City News.
Thank you for having me.
Now, first of all, why do you think you're the best candidate for the job?
Well, we have a range of candidates in this race, but I'm the only one who stands for genuinely conservative policies and ideas across the entire spectrum. I will never compromise on those principles when confronted with Liberal Party attacks. Just to give you a few examples, I'm the only candidate that's pledged to defund the World Health Organization, the only candidate that's pledged to getting Canada out of the Paris Agreement. I'm very strong on national sovereignty issues. And I'm the only person who has an immigration plan, a plan to reduce immigration and make sure that our immigration plan works for Canada. I'm very strong on free speech issues. I've been very clear on bills like Bill C-16 that can compel you to talk about other genders that you may not believe in or agree with. And I'm not going to apologize for those values. And I think most people would agree I've been the strongest on those issues that I've mentioned.
Now, speaking of bills, how about C-69 here in Alberta? We care a lot about our oil and gas sector. And Jason Kennedy would like to see it scrapped, but I mean, it's a federal issue. So what would you do about C-69 and help support our energy sector?
That's right. So I'm definitely against Bill C-69 and Bill C-48. But being the only candidate that's against the Paris Agreement, really scrapping those two bills isn't enough. We have to get out of the Paris Agreement. If we don't, it'll bring in some other regulation or some other carbon pricing in some way.
Now, many political pundits, Derek, are referring to MacKay and O'Toole as the red Tories and you and Leslyn Lewis as the true blue candidates, as in you're socially and fiscally conservative. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm certainly socially and fiscally conservative in all ways. That's a true statement.
Now, the LGBTQ2+ community seems to always put a lot of pressure on all political leaders to march in their annual Gay Pride Parade. Will you be willing to do so should you become the next leader of the CPC?
So it's interesting that this race has made whether or not you'd march in a Pride Parade a litmus test. And if that's the question that we have to answer, I've been very clear on that from the beginning. I'm not interested in marching in a parade like that. I mean, it's a free country. If other people want to do it, that's great. But I won't be marching as a leader, and I've been very clear on that from the beginning, unlike some of the other candidates.
Now, you are the first Seventh-day Adventist ever elected to the House of Commons, and you really haven't shied away from your faith very much. Let's flesh that out a little bit, Derek, and how God plays a major role in your decision-making, and how you lean on him for strength, wisdom, and discernment.
Yeah, I believe that God has a plan for everybody, and I believe that if we follow God in all things, He will take us to places that we may not have expected to go. And I feel called in this position. I feel called to enter politics to serve the country and to make it a place where everybody can prosper. And I certainly everything I do with an eye to believing I'll have to answer to God for it at the end of the day. So that's something that's integral to my life.
Now, Derek, let's say you become the next leader of the Conservative Party of Canada and possibly Canada's next Prime Minister. Would you allow MPs within your party, your rank and file, to vote with their hearts and conscience? In other words, those who maybe support abortion and gay rights?
Yeah, so you know what? I believe that each MP is accountable to the people that elect them, and I believe that they need to make the decisions that they feel are best. And sometimes I may disagree with those, but I don't believe in a top-down structure that twists people's arms. I think a lot of socially conservative people like myself have been concerned about similar things, and I don't think it would be fair to apply the same pressure to others. So I'm certainly in favor of free votes in Parliament.
Would you reopen the abortion debate?
Well, I have I have a pro-life plan that addresses a lot of different things in relation to abortion. And you know, it's funny. There's a lot of sort of discussion about whether or not we should do that, but we've never really had an abortion debate. We had some laws that were struck down. We tried to come back with some other laws, and we never did. We're one of the only countries in the entire world that doesn't have any laws in relation to abortion, and it creates a legal vacuum. So I think that Parliament is a place to discuss challenging issues, and I haven't shied away from that.
Now, once a vaccine for COVID-19 is found, would you recommend that the drug become mandatory for Canadians or optional?
Well, I certainly am not in favor of mandatory anything when it comes to medical treatments. I believe that people need to have a choice whether or not to choose it. And I've been critical of the fact that Canada is partnering with a company in China, CanSino Biologics, which is related to the Chinese military. I don't think we should be dealing with China at all when it comes to doing anything to do with COVID.
Now, what qualities would you say you have over another believer who's running in this leadership race, Leslyn Lewis? Because I've noticed, you know, on social media sometimes there's a little bit of going back and forth between you two as true blue conservatives.
Well, yes. Well, I think that, you know, in this race, we need to do our best to distinguish ourselves from others. And I've been clear on the fact that I appreciate Ms. Lewis's stand on social issues. But, you know, we're not the same candidate. And I have certainly gone above and beyond in not only highlighting social conservative issues, but also highlighting issues like the Paris Agreement. Leslyn Lewis, for example, does not want to pull us out of the Paris Agreement. I have an immigration plan that reduces immigration and basically promotes housing and housing affordability in Canada. I've also been clear that we shouldn't be funding the World Health Organization. So there are a variety of, you know, sort of Canadian sovereignty issues that I've highlighted. I have a more robust free speech platform in my view. It's nothing against the other candidates, but of course it is incumbent on us to make differences. I mean, at the end of the day, you're not voting for two people, you're voting for one. And I'm trying to share with people the reasons why they should vote for me.
Many people argue that the two top dogs are Peter MacKay and Aaron O'Toole. And Derek, I mean, you're dreaming here. I mean, these guys are well known. They're rock stars there on the Hill. So what is it going to take to defeat these guys and actually win the leadership of the Conservative Party of Canada?
Well, I really don't agree that this race is, going to go in a particular direction. With the amount of sort of positive feedback that we've been getting, I firmly believe. I mean, some of the data that's come out says that, you know, half of people are undecided. I believe I get hundreds of emails every day that say, you know what, Derek, I don't answer any surveys. I'm voting for you. I think we're going to see an upset in this race. That's my belief.
Now, there's another controversy surrounding Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, Derek, and the We Charities Scandal. This isn't the first ethics issue involving our Prime Minister. We don't have to look too far back with SNC-Lavalin affair, the Aga Khan trip, not to mention the blackface controversy. Why does it appear that nothing really sticks to Prime Minister Justin Trudeau?
Well, it's interesting, and part of it is the fact that Canadians are disengaged from politics generally, the average person. I think his time is coming. I mean, we had a perfect storm in the last election, but our conservative leader at that time wasn't willing to stand on values issues. And unlike some of the other candidates in this race, I know that values issues and Canadian sovereignty issues are a key to expanding and opening up our base. There are so many people who don't even vote because they don't see a moral difference between the Liberals and the Conservatives. And, you know, the Liberals have gone so far when it comes to their, you know, radical gender agenda. They're so pro-abortion. I mean, whether you're pro-life or pro-choice, we can all agree there needs to be some rules relating to abortion. And we just refuse as conservatives over and over to dig in our toes. I know for a fact that there's so many Canadians, new Canadians, who hold these family values, and we can expand our base with these people.
What will it take to really defeat the Trudeau Liberals? Now, how will you personally make those inroads in Quebec where there's so many seats to be won?
Well, I was just in Quebec actually touring for a week, and I did two interviews in French, and we did a little search on the Google statistics. And out of the 4 candidates, 2 of whom were touring at the time in Quebec, so Peter MacKay and myself, I was getting 60% of all Google searches in the entire province of Quebec. Peter MacKay was 22%, and the other candidates were about 10 or 11. I believe right now, for example, my immigration policy, which is to reduce the number of immigrants and to give provinces control over immigration, Quebecers love that. So, I mean, yes, they are more secular in certain ways, but they have a latent nationalism that we can tap into as well. And I firmly believe that I can do very well in Quebec. I'm positive.
So your French is pretty good so far?
Well, it is. I mean, when I got into this race, I wasn't speaking much French at all. And now I'm at a position where I'm able to do interviews in French. Obviously, I'm learning. But many people have taken note of, wow, that guy's really learned that French pretty quick. And some have said that, given a year or two, I'll probably be better than the whole lot. And that was the Toronto Star that said that. So must be true.
Derek, our deficit is over $340 billion and our debt over $1 trillion. What's your plan to fix our fiscal mess and get us back in the black?
Well, there's no magical answer, but the answer is the same as it's always been. It means cutting government waste, and I've highlighted a bunch of things that I would cut. We fund the World Health Organization almost $1 billion. We fund foreign abortions, again, almost $1 billion. We have a media bailout for the mainstream media. All of these things and more need to be cut. We need to get our energy sector back on track. That means getting out of Paris Agreement, scrapping Bill C-69, C-48, and then we have to cut regulations and cut taxes for small business and entrepreneurs. And I make a distinction between Canadian small business and big business and international corporations. Not that they're all bad, but we need to focus on made in Canada, and I have a great plan to do that.
What plan do you have for our farmers here, especially in Alberta? A lot of the farming families are hurting right now with COVID and the fact that China's still not receiving Canadian canola.
Yeah, that's great. So, I mean, when it comes to China, we really have to play hardball, play tougher with them. And when it comes to our farmers, we need to remember that, our food supply needs to be a top priority. So I believe generally, yes, the government needs to cut waste. The government needs to cut, handouts to corporations. But when we're investing in farmers, when we're protecting our farmers, that's not handouts, that's not waste. So that's something that I'm in favor of.
The controversy surrounding the extradition of Huawei executive Meng Wanzhou continues. Many argue that China arrested the 2 Canadians, Michael Spavor and Michael Kovrig, in retaliation to the arrest of Meng Wanzhou. Now, the PM has stated that he will not do a prisoner exchange because it'll make other Canadians' lives, it'll put their lives in jeopardy. So how can we safely bring home the 2 Michaels? I mean, Derek, they've been charged with spying and could face the death penalty.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Justin Trudeau on that in terms of we absolutely cannot do hostage diplomacy. We can't do a trade. Now, of course, he says that on one hand, and then he is doing everything, he's afraid to even use the word Taiwan in the House of Commons. So the Liberals have been extremely obsequious in relation to China. We need to take a new approach with China. We need to work with our allies. I mean, the United States right now has the guts, as it were, to stand up to China, and we need to do the same. I believe that we need to take Chinese infiltration, Communist Party linked Chinese infiltration seriously. And we've seen CSIS reports for the last couple of decades talking about, money related to crime and money related to the kleptocracy of the Communist Party, buying up our real estate, cozying up to municipal politicians, cozying up to even higher level politicians. We have to take this seriously and arrest anybody who is, basically spying for China on our territory.
Now let's talk about the relationship with the United States and how important that really is, our biggest trading partner. How long should we keep the border closed to non-essential travel?
Well, here's the thing. I'm skeptical, and I know that the majority of Canadians would actually disagree with me, but I'm actually skeptical as to how useful a border closure is at this point. There's all kinds of Canadians. I have a friend here who has a good job in the States, and his family's here, and he's torn between two. I mean, if he goes to the States, he can't come back every weekend. He's got to quarantine when he gets there. He can't be coming back and forth. I believe that we need to have maybe not fully open borders right now, but I'm certainly skeptical as to a complete closure. And there's so many businesses that are dependent on tourists that are going to be just slammed this summer with what's going on. So, I of course promote safety and all these things, but playing it too safe has consequences as well.
So how can we really improve our relationship with the United States?
Well, I think really, I mean, if we take a look at how Justin Trudeau has reacted to Donald Trump, he said things behind his back. He's promoted his sort of left-wing causes at the expense of legitimate sort of trade discussions. I firmly believe that the United States can be our greatest friend. I've said we need to put more money into our military to meet our NATO commitments. I think if it was known and felt that Canada was pulling its weight in some of these agreements, we could get more, whether it's softwood lumber agreements, whether it's with our farming or other types of trade arrangements. I believe we can get better agreements and more sound concessions from the United States.
Conservative Party of Canada leadership candidate Derek Sloan, thanks for joining me today from Ontario.
Thank you.
On behalf of all of us here at BCN, I'm Hal Roberts. God bless. Thanks so much for watching.